Remember, this spring,
in Japan, we are very much afraid of Chinese invasion to Japan. And there's many people who lives in Japan with Chinese, and our government is actually officially inviting them to live here. And so within the population, the amount of the Chinese people are increasing. What do you think of it?
Yeah, now's the wrong time to encourage immigration from China. Because, you know, in my country, for instance, across our southern border, we're seeing a lot of very suspicious migrants from China. First of all, there's been an explosion of migrants from China. And most of that is because people have just given up on China and are leaving. I mean, they've just turned their back on their own country because they are so desperate. But among the group of Chinese migrants, we are seeing packs of males in groups of 5 to 15 of military age, traveling without family members, pretending not to speak English. And U.S. Border Patrol knows that some of these males have links to the Chinese military. So we have to be concerned that they are saboteurs coming into our country. And Japan has to be concerned that Chinese migrants coming into Japan could very well be saboteurs as well. Remember, this spring, this was a facility that was going to be, I think, part of the infrastructure to attack America. This lab could not have been the only one that existed in the United States. So we've got to be really, really on the lookout for Chinese saboteurs in our country. And I think the same thing is true of your country as well.
Yeah, thank you. What should we do to gain more awareness of, CCP?
Well, first of all, I think countries, the United States, Japan, others, should stop investment and trade with China, because what we're doing is we're enriching a hostile regime that is preparing its military to fight the United States, to fight Japan. And so it's morally and strategically wrong to enrich this regime, which is hostile to us. Now, I know a lot of people will think that's drastic, but it is just insane to make China stronger right now because it's run by a regime that is hostile, that has territorial designs on Japan, for instance, in the East China Sea and the Senkakus. So it's, I think, very important to make sure that we do not save the Chinese economy with our trade, investment, and technical cooperation.
That's right. When it comes to food prices, I think China is almost importing the food. They used to have more trades outside of China. Do you think there's a possibility of the food crisis?
China, we know that every year they become less self-sufficient in food. And so they are heading towards a food crisis where they can't feed themselves. And that can drive China to do all sorts of dangerous and provocative things. But we know that Chinese agriculture is not keeping up. And this is it'd be critical for any country, but especially one like China, which is not only the food crisis. I mean, it's got the stagnating economy. They've got the plunging property prices, accelerating capital flight, falling currency, worsening food shortages, of course, and a deteriorating environment and failing local governments. They got a demographic crisis. So, this food crisis is occurring with others, and that means that China, I don't think, has the ability to save itself, especially because Xi Jinping, the Chinese ruler, his idea is more state control, cutting China off from the world. These are things that cause disasters. They've caused disasters in the past in Chinese history. They're going to cause the next disaster in China.
2024, we have so many elections gonna gonna go on. To start with, I would say Russia, India, Taiwan is very important, and US. I think Taiwan is also quite important. What's your view on that?
Yeah. The January 13th, 2024 election in Taiwan is going to be really, really important because it's not only just the president, but it's also the national legislature, the legislative yuan. And, right now, there are some candidates for president who are actually very pro-China. Fortunately, William Lai, the vice president of the Democratic Progressive Party, is ahead in the polls. But a lot can happen, especially because Beijing is working very hard to make sure he does not get elected. But most people in Taiwan, they don't view themselves as Chinese. They view themselves as Taiwanese only. And in self-identification polls, basically, more than 80% of the people believe that they are Taiwanese only. And the people who believe that they're Chinese only, like 3 or 4%. So, people vote often along their cultural identity. And if they do that this time, then William Lai will be elected.
Right. And how about US election? Will it affect CCP anyhow?
Well, China always has been very involved in U.S. elections. Like, for instance, in 2020, they were supporting Joe Biden over Bernie Sanders in the Democratic Party primaries. And, of course, they've supported Biden over Trump in the general election. We don't know who the candidates will be for the two parties, but probably it'll be Biden for the Democrats and probably Trump for the Republicans. And clearly the Chinese don't want Trump. They don't want Trump because Trump was, a lot of reasons, but one of them is because Trump is just unpredictable. And the Chinese can deal with a hostile American president, but the one thing they can't deal with is an unpredictable American president. And Trump is unpredictable. So I think China's going to do all it possibly can to support Biden.
I see. I don't know how much you can talk about Hong Kong, but my personal story recently, one of my close friends from Hong Kong who studied with me in England, they gave up on living in Hong Kong. And also the media did report on those umbrella movement and so on. But nowadays, they don't really talk about Hong Kong, the situation of the Hong Kong, if they have the free speech and so on. How are you seeing Hong Kong right now?
Well, the world, to a large extent, has forgotten Hong Kong. China has been working very hard to take full control of it. And, a lot of people say, oh, the Chinese think long term. No, they don't think long term. And we know this from what they did in Hong Kong. The Sino-British Joint Declaration said that there was going to be 50 years of a high degree of autonomy. But after that, China was going to take full control. That's in 2047. Well, if you're a long-term thinker, if you think in centuries, as people said, well, the Chinese would just let Hong Kong be and they would take it over in 2047. But no, they weren't willing to wait. And what we saw in 2020, especially with the adoption of the national security law, was that Beijing was taking full control of Hong Kong well before 2047, which shows you basically the Chinese are very short-term thinkers these days, especially because what they did, remember what they did in 2020 was that had a big effect in Taiwan. Remember Tsai Ing-wen, the president of Taiwan, she was not even going to get the nomination of her party to run for re-election. She was that unpopular. Then, we saw what happened in 2019 in Hong Kong, where China really went very hard against freedom and democracy, went very hard against the protesters. And people in Taiwan saw that and said they didn't want anything to do with China. And so Tsai Ing-wen not only got the renomination of her party to run, but she won in a landslide, which shows you that this was, China got exactly the wrong things from its perspective. By cracking down in Hong Kong, they helped re-elect Tsai Ing-wen, the person that they least wanted to help. So really what it shows is that the Chinese are really short-term thinkers, and a lot of their policies undermine what they want.
Thank you. Lastly, so I think so many grassroots type of people are watching my channel, but they are also trying others to wake up. Is there any message to those people who's working hard?
The world right now is at a critical time, and as citizens of our countries, I'm an American, you're Japanese. You've got to make sure that your government is going to defend you from a very dangerous situation in the world. So you have every incentive to go out and vote and to make sure that the candidates that are elected are ones who will protect your families, not only at home, but also abroad.
Okay, thank you. Well, is there any food that you like from Japan that you look forward to eat?
My wife and I love Japanese food. And we were afraid that when we came here that all the meals would be Western because, you know, our host, you know, the Japanese Conservative Union is so gracious. We thought that they might want to have Western food because they thought that that might please us. But fortunately, last night we had Japanese food. And so we were very, very happy. And whenever we have a chance, we've had Japanese food on this trip. So we just, you know, we had beef last night. We had udon, noodles, and we've had a lot of food. Japanese curries, and so we've been very happy. We put on too much weight.
Great. Thank you very much for your kind interview. Have a lovely day, and I look forward for your speech later on.
Thank you.
Thank you.